Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about the four what are we going to talk about? The four relationship safeties. I had a massive brain fart right there. The four relationship safeties. So, I used to teach relationship education and I really enjoyed it. The cool thing about teaching relationship education is actually the people you get to meet because you meet a lot of people in a lot of different places in their lives. And sometimes you meet people that are going through really challenging situations, and sometimes you meet people that are actually in really great situations, really great times in their relationship, but they just want to get better. They want to improve. And they also have so much wisdom to share. And in my career, working in social services and having a background working in psychology, I've learned a lot from people that are dealing with suffering, but I've also learned a lot from people that are doing things in a really healthy way. And the four relationship safeties speak a lot to having a healthy relationship if you do that correctly, or having an unhealthy relationship if you're doing it incorrectly, if you're compromising the safety. So let's start with the first safety in a healthy relationship, the first relationship safety. And that safety is commitment. So commitment can mean a lot of different things depending on where you are in your life or how old you are, what kind of relationships you're trying to have. To me, commitment is promise, it's trust, it's depending on the relationship you're in, monogamy, and basically committing to one another. If you're in a marriage, you're committing to each other for life, a domestic partnership for life. And, we've all heard the vows through sickness and health, till death do us part, for richer or for poorer, on it goes. And commitment is really important to have as a relationship safety because when there is no commitment, there can be a lot of insecurity. And so one or both partners can feel like they're not secure in the relationship, and that can start to compromise the relationship over time. I think a lot of us who are older have heard the stories of couples breaking up because one partner doesn't want to move in with the other partner and start cohabitating and living together, or one partner is afraid to get married and they don't ask the other partner to get engaged so they can start the process of getting married, or one person wants to have children and the other person doesn't want to have children. All of these things can compromise the commitment safety of a relationship. And it's so important to have commitment in your relationship. Now, I'm talking about having commitment in a relationship, but how does that work? Well, like a lot of things in a relationship, there has to be equitable, how do you say, contributions. So, in regards to commitment, how do we have equitable contributions? Well, we have to have conversations about commitment. We have to work towards understanding what commitment looks like to us, depending on what kind of relationship we are in and who we are with our partner. I have a quote that I used to say when I used to teach that's called, "In the absence of communication, everything is left to interpretation." And I really believe that when it comes to commitment or any other relational issue, that if you're not communicating and working towards setting a goal, a vision, or a mission as a couple, the other person is going to interpret things to their own devices. They're going to say, well, we're not talking about this, so does this mean you're not really with both feet into this relationship, that you're not really in love? Are you just using me? There's so many things that it can turn negative if you're not communicating about the commitment in the relationship. So it's really important, whether it's an intimate relationship or even friendships, to have that commitment safety. Like, can I trust you? Do you have my back? Some people say, are you ride or die? Like, are you with me, no matter what? Is it conditional, our relationship? Is it based off of conditions? Or is it an unconditional love? Is it a spiritual love that transcends um, just the normal expectations we have in life. One thing that we see in like long-term, long-held marriages is usually people that believe in something bigger than themselves, whether that be spiritual or even putting the marriage on a pedestal and having reverence for the fact that you made that commitment to each other. People that have a higher purpose, a higher sense of the relationship, those are the people that usually don't divorce or don't quit on each other or don't leave each other. Um, People that usually don't make it through and are not committed to the relationship usually think about themselves first. They see the relationship from the standpoint of, how does the relationship benefit me? How What's going on in the relationship right now and how does it relate to me, as opposed to how does it relate to a higher purpose, which is our bond or our commitment, or our you know the mission of our values and how we see our lives together as a we above I. And so it's very important in a healthy relationship to have commitment. So that's the first safety. The second safety in a relationship is community. And I think if you look at this, there's four safeties, and each of them, if you look at it like taking a piece of a percentage, 100 divided by 4 is 25%. So each safety is like one fourth as important in the relationship. And I think having a healthy community in your relationship is very, very important. It's very underrated. It's very, very important to have communal safety. So, what does communal safety look like? Well, let's use the example of marriage. When you get married, not only is it two people becoming one entity by marrying and having the connection of marriage or domestic partnership, you are two becoming one. A lot of people change their last name. One of the partners changes it to the other partner's last name, and you become one family. But you're not just integrating each other, but you're integrating potentially each other's families, each other's friends, social circles, things of that nature, finances. And so you become a community of people. So person X has all these people around person X, and person Y has all these people around person Y, and they're part of the community that surrounds the marriage. And so how those people see the marriage can affect the marriage. So it's really important to have people that I call friends of the marriage, people that are friendly toward your marriage, toward your relationship, towards your domestic partnership, towards your friendship with someone. These are people that support and respect the health, and they want things to be healthy. These are people that are encouraging a good relationship. These are people that when there are challenges, when there are problems, they're encouraging you to work through them and to fix them, so long as they're reasonable, of course, right? We don't want to encourage people to stay in relationships that are very unhealthy, but encouraging people to not quit on relationships that are salvageable or that there's, problems that can be solved together. And so it's so important to have what I call friends of the marriage. So, you have your in-laws, you have your blood family, you have your friends, you have their friends. All of that stuff is important. And I've always believed that when you're building a community in regards to your relationship, it's important to show the person you're with that, like, hey, my friends can become your friends little by little. We can get to know each other. You don't have to be best friends with my best friends, but I want you to know that these are people that I want to be around you and connect with you as well, not just with me. And that's intimate. That also ties into what we just spoke about, which is commitment. You're showing commitment by integrating each other's people with each other. Now, those people themselves, they have their own lives, they have their own way of being. So, as we know in life, not everyone that we know is positive or someone that brings a great attitude to everything. So, it's important to have friends of the marriage or people that are in the community around the marriage be supportive or positive or encouraging. What happens when they're not that way? What happens when our community is compromised and we have people that are nitpicking your partner, nitpicking you, saying negative things, bringing negative energy to the relationship, bringing maybe burdens into your relationship. Maybe you have family members that are asking one partner for a lot of money, and that puts stress on the relationship because now that's a financial burden to loan out money to this person who's in the community. There's so many different variations of how community can become harmful to a relationship or toxic. And that's why it's really important for couples to work together to understand their community and to really try to integrate community with each other through their commitment. So, for example, let's say one of the partners has like a sibling that is in debt, and the sibling, the brother, the sister, or whatever, asks for money all the time. Well, as a couple, you have to work through that and say, how are we going to handle this together? You know, if we're married, this is, you know, maybe our money. And like, how are we going to handle loaning out money to your family, or if my family asks, or our friends ask? And you have a standard of what I would call a standard of practice. These are things that you talk about before they happen or as they happen. So you can kind of build up what I would call the constitution of your relationship. You have these ideas, this is how we handle things. Because if we know how to handle community issues, then we don't have to battle with each other. And oh, like, well, I want to loan money to so and so, but I don't want to loan to them, or I want to do this, but I want to do that, or that person said this and that affected me, and that's your mother, whatever it might be, right? And this happens all the time. So what I would say is you have to front load by working with your partner and addressing these things, even sometimes before they happen, like having a conversation like, hey, what would happen if someone from your family said something really bad about me or about you or whatever? Like, how should we handle this? Like, as a team, like, what's a healthy way that we can deal with these potential challenges that may arise in our community? Or we might say, hey, like, we're dating and I want to meet your family. How can we integrate me into your family in a way that's healthy for you? How does, you know, or maybe you have a family, unfortunately, that maybe they're toxic and they don't really care or want to, you know, be friendly with your partner. How do you have that conversation with your partner and say, you know, my family's had a lot of drama, we have a lot of baggage, we've dealt with a lot of stuff. I just want you to know that that's not reflective of how I feel about you. That's the life that they're living, that's the journey that they're on. So I don't want you to meet them and think that they don't like you or this or that. It's just kind of the way it goes. And it goes back to that piece about communication. And the absence of communication, everything's left to interpretation. So when it comes to community, it's important to have conversations. It's important to communicate with each other. And ultimately, remember, whether it's commitment or community, that at the end of the day, you're coming together. You're finding a mutual agreement on how you're going to handle things and creating this constitution of your relationship, these understandings of how you guys handle the challenges that come up in relationships together. So, yeah, I hope that kind of elaborates on community safety. And I think from hearing how I'm talking about it, it's so important to have a healthy community around you or to understand how to handle an unhealthy community or unhealthy community member. Because it's so beautiful when you have friends of your relationship, people that encourage you to stay together, work together, to find success together, and to have a beautiful experience. And you want to be that for others because you're, without knowing it, sometimes you are part of other couples' communities and they want you to be a positive influence, right? So the third safety, which is really important, is emotional safety. So I think, you know, that's pretty cut and dry in a lot of ways, but I'll go into it. So what is like emotional safety? So I think emotional safety can be so many different things in a relationship, but I think it has like the vibe of the relationship, how we talk to one another, what kind of tone do we use with one another? Are we showing respect in how we communicate? Are we respecting someone's sensibilities, someone's sensitivities? You know, one word that I love to use in relationships when it comes to emotional safety is understanding. It's really important to understand your partner because you don't have to agree with your partner, but you should understand where they're coming from. And there's a distinction to be made there. When you're understanding someone, That doesn't mean you're agreeing with everything they think or how they act or what they feel. But when you're understanding, you're showing them respect. You're showing them that you're present for the relationship, that you're there, that you're committed. And that's a great sign of respect if you can understand. Now, emotional safety also encompasses things like emotional abuse. How do we talk to our partner? What kind of words do we use? How do we treat each other, and what kind of expectations do we have of each other? Do we come to the table and talk things through and figure things out? These things can affect the emotional safety. Remember what I said earlier. In the absence of communication, things can be left to interpretation. So if you're someone who has trouble communicating with somebody, your partner might feel neglected, and they might feel emotionally neglected over time. And that can affect the commitment of the relationship. And that emotionally neglected person might go to some friends. And if those friends are not friends of the relationship, they might encourage them to leave, or they might be a friend and say, hey, it's not working out, or hey, you guys need to figure this out. But anyway, either way, the emotional safety can be compromised by not being connective. And so it's really important to connect on an emotional level. And I think communication is a major, major part of that. It's really important to communicate, whether that be in talking to one another. If you're not a big talker, maybe you can agree to write to each other. So I don't think there's absolutely anything wrong with, maybe like if it's a serious subject, saying, hey, I'm going to sit down and we'll text each other, or I'll send you an email with how I feel about this, and you can respond and take your time to think about it, as opposed to just speaking off the cuff, where things can escalate and get out of control and compromise the emotional safety of the relationship. One thing I would also suggest when talking about emotional safety is slow down your communication. Don't talk fast. Don't try to figure things out fast. Sometimes we don't figure everything out in the moment. Talk to each other, say things, like, what, partner, this is a marathon, this isn't a sprint. Let's, maybe we're agreeing to disagree right now, but let's come back to the table tomorrow and discuss this. One suggestion I have, if you're in a relationship and you're trying to preserve the emotional safety, bring a notepad. Anytime that you guys are talking about serious things in the relationship that need to be resolved, or emotional things that can get emotional and affect the emotional safety of a relationship, sit down with your partner and jot down some notes of what you're saying, because you can't remember everything if you're talking for half an hour or an hour. So have a notepad ready and sit there and take some notes, or write some notes on your notes app on your phone to remember, and keep those notes. So you remember how to love your partner, how to treat your partner, how to treat your family or friends. You see this a lot, like if you're at a job and you go to talk to human resources about an issue with a coworker or something. Usually the head of the human resources is going to sit there with you and take notes while you're talking to them, because they want to remember what you said. They want to be present for you. They want to make sure that they're accurate in the information that you're giving them, so that way they can do the right things to help make the situation better. And it's the same thing in a relationship. Like, handle your relationship like it's important, because it is important, because it affects you and it affects your partner. And ultimately, depending on your relationship, it affects your kids, it affects your extended family. And gosh, that's even something I haven't even gone into, whether it's commitment safety, community safety, or emotional safety. Like if there's children involved, that's all very important. All the things I mentioned earlier is even to another level of importance, because now you have children involved. And how do children interplay with that? How can emotional safety not just affect your partner, it can affect the people you're living with, like your children or extended family. And so I hope that, talking about emotional, I'm sure I didn't hit on every little piece of the puzzle, but I hope you can understand how important that is, like how you talk to your partner, the kind of tone you have in your voice. It's important to be calm. It's important to work really hard on managing your anger. You probably shouldn't have really important discussions when you're angry. I have a rule that I believe in, is the 24-hour rule. If you can't agree on something, or if you're getting angry, take a break from each other, take a time out, but don't take a time out for longer than 24 hours. And don't leave your partner and go stay somewhere else unless there's like a domestic violence situation happening. But don't just leave and like go to the bar or go out to eat, by yourself, and like still be in the same home and be around each other, but take a 24-hour break so that way you guys can calm down, or less than 24-hour break. It could be an hour, it could be 15 minutes, it could be the next morning, and then get back to work on your relationship. And remember, the last thing before I get to the fourth safety is remember that your relationship needs maintenance like everything else in your life needs maintenance. If you have a house, you have a lawn, you need to mow your lawn, you need to pick your weeds, you need to prune your trees. If you have a car, you need to change your oil, you need to put air in your tires, you need to clean it up. If you have a bedroom, you need to make your bed, you need to get your clothes and do your laundry. If you have a face, you have to shave, you have to put on lotion, you have to cut your hair, you have to take a shower. If you don't do any of these things, you're gonna have problems. And it's the same thing with the relationship. You have to maintenance your relationship. So whether it's in reaffirming your commitment and how you choose to be a committed partner, how this kind of community you have and how you maintenance your community, or how you treat each other emotionally, this is all work that you're putting into your relationship, and it's very, very important. So the last relationship safety, the fourth one, is physical safety. Of course, that's the most obvious and important one. And when people hear physical safety, I think most of us think of domestic violence, which is obvious, right? So we don't strike each other, we don't hit each other, we don't make those mistakes. And I'm talking to a lot of people that haven't done it, and I'm probably talking to some people that have made that mistake. And sometimes we make that mistake when we're young or when we're middle aged or when we're old, but it's a horrible, horrifying mistake. And you have to grow from your mistakes. You have to learn. If you've done something bad, that's incredibly inappropriate to strike someone in a relationship. It destroys the trust, the commitment. It will destroy your community and them knowing that you did it, and it'll destroy the emotional safety of someone. And we have to learn from a mistake, or we have to never do it if we've never done it, or if it's been done to us, we have to learn to survive and move forward with our lives from that, and be better in how we grow from the experience of trauma. And so physical safety is paramount in a relationship, but I won't just talk about the physical safety that's obvious, which is domestic violence, physical abuse of things of that nature. But there's also sexual abuse. There's sexual coercion. There's I'll even go down the line is simple things like if you're dating somebody and you force them to go on birth control because you don't want to have a child, but now your partner is taking this medicine they might not want to take or that might affect their bodies. Like, you have to be really considerate of like the physical safety of the relationship. It could be even be something as simple as like when you meet someone, you have different diets, and maybe you eat a certain food that triggers health issues in them or triggers weight gain or things of that nature. Like, how many times do we see people in relationships that one person's overweight or chubby, and they get together and now they're both really overweight, and it perpetuates and they both get really unhealthy? Like, that affects the physical safety of the relationship, like when two people are not healthy, and that has a lot of costs. And so it's funny, it's not funny, it's a trip to compare the two, domestic violence, and then something is different is like even how your diets work. But anything that pertains to your physical safety in a relationship is important. And so like people say, well, how do we even talk about that? Well, it's a taboo subject, domestic violence or hitting someone, because everyone says, oh, I'll never hit someone, I'll never do this, I'll never do that. But so many people have lines. So many people have lines. So many people, when pushed or when they get angry or whatever, they act ways that they never thought they could act. Whether it's a problem with a partner or a personal problem, and how you have issues in controlling your own behavior. And so it's really important to have conversations with yourself and with your partner about physical safety, about, hey, like, do you have anger issues? Do you get really mad? Like, are you someone that like in the past has like broken things, or are you someone who's gotten in a lot of fights when you were younger? Are you someone who grew up in a house where you saw domestic violence? Are you someone that when you get angry, you hold it in and then you blow up? Like, these are all very important questions to ask as you're getting to know each other before you even move in together or when you're dating. Like, it's not inappropriate to talk about physical safety during the dating phase. It's actually very healthy for you to do that. So these are all things that you want to understand and learn before you are even in that commitment phase. Before you're committed, like how do you see it? And be honest with each other. If you've ever made the mistake of and doing an act of domestic violence and hurting someone, you need to be honest about that. You need to tell your partner that, and you need to show contrition for your behavior. Or if you're someone who's been hurt, it might be important to tell someone, hey, I did experience this. This is really, might be really hard to talk about. And maybe I don't want to go into details of what I experienced, but I did experience being assaulted and having domestic violence committed on me. And I need you to understand that that's a really important thing that has hurt me deeply in my life. So if it's sexually, maybe you have, I know a lot of women have like endometriosis, or, they might have types of issues that affect like, urinary tract infections, things of that nature that people deal with that can harm, and they can feel pain during sexual intercourse. It's important to tell your partner the truth about what you're dealing with, so that way you don't suffer in silence, that you don't live in pain, during intercourse or having issues with each other. That it affects, like, it compromises the physical health of your relationship, because most partners don't want to hurt each other. It can be something as simple as like the type of sex you have. Is it gentle? Is it rough? You know, your preferences, you guys should talk about those preferences. That's physical safety. These are all really important things, including the diet. Like I said, like if you have a gluten intolerance and you're dating someone that loves pizza, you should be honest with them and say, like, hey, when I eat gluten, I get swollen. I look like I'm 6 months pregnant, and it affects me deeply. So, or hey, I'm allergic to this or that, or I don't like sugar. I don't like diet sugar. Whatever it is. Like, you want to find someone that's the right fit for you. You don't want to just become the right fit for someone, because usually those relationships don't last. So you want to find someone where you can mutually commit to each other, build a beautiful community together, a safe community that's full of friends of your relationship, have wonderful emotional safety that is cultivated through beautiful communication, and preserve and heal physical safety, through communication, through connection, through speaking to one another and being honest about everything. Man, I really hope this was helpful. It's nothing but love for you guys. I want the best for your relationships. Many blessings to you all. Thank you for your time.